Greetings, Year 33 members. I come to you from the Make the Waffle Studios in beautiful Longmont, Colorado. We are going to spend a little bit of time before we get to our review and our preview talking about some tiebreaker scenarios and stuff. I just want to make sure before we really get into the heat of the playoff push, that we're all on the same page. That's basically what I want to do. So that's the plan. So what I'm going to actually do is start with the standings, and then we'll talk about some of the tiebreaker scenarios as they are written, which, by the way, could use a little tweaking, probably a little revision, because it hasn't actually been written down, I don't think, and since we've made a couple of changes. So for those of you that are into procedural stuff, please make sure you're paying attention and shoot me some notes if you see something that seems unfair or unclear or anything like that. Okay. Notice that our standings are thus. Tulsa is commanding first place at a 7-2 record, and based upon the rule of 500, has clinched a playoff spot. So definitely hasn't clinched a number one seed, that's for sure. But definitely in. If you make 7, you're going to be in. So 7-2. Here are 3 teams, and this is one of the reasons, again, I was wanting to talk about some tiebreakers. So we got 3 teams, 2, 3, and 4, all at 6-3. And Sleeper will sort those based upon total points, and that is not necessarily the way we have ever done it. So just want you guys to be aware of that. And we'll talk about how that works so you guys can do the math on your own. For what it's worth, if you just want to follow the video updates from week to week as we get later and later, I will be pointing out who has tiebreakers where and who's clinched where and who's that sort of thing. Okay? And then notice we only have 2 teams at 5-4, which means if the playoffs were today, we would have a 6-team bracket. It would be very easy as far as who's in and who's out. It'd be a little trickier as far as who's what seed, because we'd have to go through some tiebreakers. But on the odd weeks, it appears things go kind of down to 6, and on the even weeks, things log jam up a little bit, and sometimes we're up to 8. But for what it's worth, even these teams that are 4 and 5 obviously can make it to 7-7, and we even have a team down here at the bottom, 2 and 7, who, if they go on a hot streak, can still get in. It is possible. Also, though, has the soft serve chocolate frozen yogurt emoji with the eyes here, because apparently everyone scores their best week against CDs. That appears to be what's going on there. By the way, for a while it was Cleveland, and now they're in the 5 seed according to Sleeper. So that can change, and things do statistically have a tendency to balance out. And so maybe CDs can catch that mathematical probability wave and see what happens the rest of the way. But definitely not eliminated. Even at 6-8, not eliminated. Because if we end up with a bunch of teams log jammed at 6-8 and they're tied for 6th place, then we will allow one of them in. Unlikely, but possible. So CD's definitely still not eliminated. Tulsa definitely in. That's really the only 2 questions that have been answered so far. Let me go to an old school document here on the screen. So this, I used to just keep adding on the top of this document all the time. It's got a lot of pages to it. And I don't do that as much anymore now that we're on Sleeper. I would like to take this scenario once we get it ironed out, if it needs any ironing out, and pin it in Sleeper so we just have it there from now on. But this has not actually been updated for quite some time, especially since I instituted the rule of 500, which was if you finish 7-7, you're in the playoffs. So let's go through this real quick. Number 1, simply stated, 7-7 record gets you in. But let's just say we have 3 teams at 7-7, and they are the 5, 6, and 7 seeds. Okay, so we're having a 7-team bracket. The top seed's going to get a bye week, and everybody else is going to play in that first round. we need to figure out then who's going to be 5 seed, who's going to be 6, and who's going to be 7th. And according to Sleeper, that would be total points on the season. We have that in our process, but it's not first. We actually use, and I'll just throw that in here, head-to-head first. Notice this number 1 rule. This is more of kind of an aside. We went a couple of seasons having the last playoff spot decided by total points for the season, just because it felt like that was the fairest way to go. And what happened was we had a team that didn't make the playoffs because of that. And I feel like, again, they should have probably been in there. So we still have in writing, if the last playoff spot is decided in a tie. So let's say we have a whole bunch of teams at 6 and 8, and we're trying to find them for that 6th spot. According to what we have written down, we would go simply with the team with the most points. If we don't like that, we can do some discussion and talk about changing it before the playoffs. But now that we've instituted the 7 and 7 rule, I feel like this is far less likely scenario. I don't think that's going to really come into play. But if we need to talk about it, we can. But just say there's 3 teams that are in, but you're trying to decide who's the 5, who's the 6, who's the 7. Overall, head-to-head is going to matter. So you take those 3 teams, you see how they did against each other. If anybody went 2-0, then they're the highest seed. It's that simple. Once you determine the tiebreaker among 3 teams, and you take one of those teams out saying, okay, they get the 5 seed, you start over with the tiebreakers. So then now you're back to head-to-head again. We do have total points for the season at number 3 to determine. So let's say they were all 1-1 against each other. Then you just go total points, and that'd be that. We do have, by the way, a coin flip down here at number 5, which is crazy, but if we have to go there, we can. And I even have written out here a scenario where, let's say someone ends up in a tie in a playoff game. This is how we would break that tie. Believe it or not, we had Hoopton and Kevin's team, whatever they were called at the time, I don't remember, tied in a Super Bowl, and we had to go to touchdowns to figure out the winner. So we do have a scenario here if we end up with a tie game in a playoff game. And I'll just let you guys kind of take a look at that here. But it goes TDs first, then it goes to yardage, passing, rushing, and receiving, and then it goes to a coin flip. So we've got it written down. If we need to look at it, we can. I would say also, just because it's on the screen, there's this old school rule where if you had the quarterbacks back up and something happened, then you could switch out some points. I did nix that rule when we started doing Superflex. I feel like the Superflex pretty much just takes care of that. You don't have to worry about it. But if anybody had a question about why that's on there, that's why. And then I also have the history of the league here, which at some point I think I would also like to put just in the pinned post as well. So if you were looking back at our standings and you were looking at these 6 and 3 teams, and I have not done this yet, I would take, so say the 2, 3, and 4 are all with the same record. I would take these 3 teams, and if any of the 3 beat the other 2, then they would get the higher seed. And then we'd start over and go from there. And if you end up with like 2 teams played each other twice, which does, I think, happen sometimes, then those games would also count. And the bottom line, I think, really would be, as I keep doing these video updates, I will just keep explaining the process. And you guys keep me in check. If you see something where I did something wrong, let me know. Because I definitely do oops from time to time, that's for sure. But a simple procedure would be between Cleveland and San Antonio here, the 5 and the 6. Who won the regular season matchup? They get the 5, the other one gets the 6. That would be pretty simple. So that's the way our tie-breaking scenario works. Let's go to Week 9 recap real quick. Notice the Army reasserts themselves at 6 and 3, and they beat Hoopton. It has been very interesting watching my team sort of hover around that just barely in, just barely out mode. I feel pretty lucky, honestly, to be 4 and 5. So I'm going to take it, and just hope I can get those 7 wins. I'm looking to go 3-2 the rest of the way. West Canaan has a rare off week, so they are 6-3, and Kansas City has a very, very on week, and they pretty much put it on West Canaan. I don't know how many of us would have guessed that that was going to happen that way, but that is the way it happened. Cleveland is hot. They started off a little slow, but man, they are coming on, and that was a narrow victory over CDs, who now is really facing an uphill climb. So we'll talk a little bit more about their uphill climb going into next week. Big D defeated Leavenworth, and Leavenworth also getting real close to that sweat point where you got to start stringing them together here. 3-6 makes it a little tough. That's for sure. And then Tulsa just dominates San Antonio. They are 7-2, and they are not looking back. And the kiss of death seems to have no effect on the Tulsa Quakenados at this point. Our defending champions, the Gray Squirrels, get a huge game from Brock Bowers and beat Toledo. So now Toledo is 3-6 and also kind of facing an uphill climb. Definitely nobody out of it yet. Here's our weekly report. It says Steve was our best manager and John was our worst. These two are based on efficiency again. Did you leave points on the bench? Did you start the ones you were supposed to start? That sort of thing. And again, I don't know that I would put too much stock in these because it can mean different things depending on how you look at the data. Biggest blowout was Tulsa over John. Narrowest victory was Athan over Chance, and that was a huge matchup. I think that's going to be relevant when it comes down to who's in and who's out. I think for sure. Highest score was Tulsa. Lowest score was West Canaan. Rare off week, like I said, for West Canaan. The overachiever was our defending champ, and if he starts stringing together some wins, he's going to be right there. I think Brock Powers is a huge advantage in the tight end position. We'll see that coming up here in just a second. West Canaan just had an off week, and maybe they were due because they had been rolling pretty hot, so they could probably pick it back up. Look at our QB of the week, Caleb Williams. If I were to guess who was going to be QB of the week each week, I think I'd have been wrong every single week, and I definitely never would have picked Caleb Williams. But Cincinnati does suck, so there's that. Then there's the running back of the week, who you might always be able to guess. Christian McCaffrey doing McCaffrey things. I love Drake London. Still a little upset I didn't go harder after him, and that's going to help Tulsa out, I think, in the long run. Here's Brock Bowers. I didn't do a statistical analysis on this. I'm just going to go on the fly here and just see if I can see if I have the history here. Long time ago, it looks like we had 25 points by a tight end, and that was Shannon Sharp, Tony Gonzalez, and Antonio Gates. Now we've changed some of our scoring methods and that sort of thing since then, because that was like 1996, 2002, and 2005. But man, for a tight end to come in that strong, that is historical in this league. That does not happen very often. So 43 points. Kicker defense, we're not going to spend time on that. Notice Geno Smith, who is taking a lot of grief for being terrible in the real world, but he was the bench warmer of the week in our league with 35 points. Bad news for the rest of us. If Jeff Lucas has not figured out to put Rico Dowdle in, and he's literally sitting there on his bench, we are in big trouble. I think that Tulsa is shaping up as, again, the odds-on favorite here with a bench warmer like that. DJ Moore, if I just have him in there, I probably win this week, and I love that player, and I probably just didn't have the faith in Caleb Williams, frankly. So that plays. Same with Colston Loveland, who, 30 points is, again, pretty historic for a tight end, and also sitting on the bench. So that's unfortunate. Kicker defense, we're not going to talk about that. Let's preview week 10. CDs has got to beat Hoopton, I think, to be able to have a viable shot here. And of all the teams who are beatable at 4-5, I think Hoopton is probably the one. So we'll see. But Hoopton, man, we got to go to 5-5. I don't know that we can afford to go to 4-6 because we have not strung together really anything this year. And so this one might be kind of an early playoff matchup between CDs and Hoopton. West Canaan, hoping to bounce back, and they're playing Toledo this coming week. I would not want to be Toledo in this scenario. I don't know if West Canaan's got another bad week in them, so that's going to be a tough one there. Cleveland, who again has just been really coming on, and by the way, notice these are two 5-4 teams, Cleveland and San Antonio. The winner asserts themselves as a higher seed. The loser probably still makes it, but is not in as great a seeding shape. So that one's a pretty big matchup there. Quake NATO's same thing against Big D. We're going to have a seeding matchup here. If Big D happens to beat Tulsa and become 7-3 and tied with them, they again would have the tiebreaker with the victory. So that's a big deal. And if you're looking at, weird brackets where, say, maybe 7 teams make it, that top seed's going to be huge because that'll be the only bye. So, and I'll always, in fantasy football, you always want the bye. It just takes one bad week to get you out. And if you can advance automatic, you do it. That's for sure. Here's the Army going to play up against our defending champs, and they have a chance to really put the pinch on the Gray Squirrels. I think the Army lost a tight end for the season, so that might be a little tricky for them. But pay no attention to these previews because, again, I'm sure people have not set their lineups for Week 10 yet. So just know that. And then here is a 3-6 against a 4-5. And, again, the loser of this one, I think, is facing a pretty uphill climb. So, again, once we start getting closer toward the end and things start taking a little better shape, I'll explain tiebreaker scenarios as we go and clinching scenarios if we need them. And that way there will be no secrets as far as how it all pans out. My experience has been, even going into the last week, if it's complicated, when you finally see everything shake out, it becomes far less complicated. It usually just makes a lot of sense. So we'll just hope that that's the case. Folks, that is all I've got, and I didn't want to talk forever, and so I'll try and get this ended up real quick. Just so you know, I'm a couple of weeks from being in town. Going to be a quick pre-Thanksgiving visit, and just hanging out with my grandson and probably having to jet right back. So if I don't see you again, stay safe out there, and I'll plan on checking back in with you via video next week.